think it's a good time to get started. So thank you everyone for joining us this lovely rainy afternoon here in Portland, Oregon. I'm Molly Newgard. I'm the executive director here at Blue Sky. And I want to welcome you to our second event around our notion of the Blue Sky Book Club. I don't know if many of you know that our mission actually incorporates the idea of publications for education, publications to help support the careers of artists. Whether that's our Blue Sky books that are published in relation to an exhibition on the walls, or more recently, as we've seen, our ability to be able to promote other artists' books that might be published elsewhere but are in conjunction with an exhibition here at Blue Sky. So it's yet another way to extend the work of artists, and we are very happy to do that. So we wanted to start this idea of a book club, and that could be an event, it could be a list of books, it could be some kind of educational opportunity. So when Ebenezer came to me a couple months ago about this project he had been working on, I thought, well, this is a perfect way to incorporate it into this book club idea that our staff had generated. And when Ebenezer was telling me about the project, it also made sense because Ebenezer is a Blue Sky alum artist and has been represented in both the drawers and an exhibition on the walls here at Blue Sky. If any of you came back in October, November of 2019, right before everything shut down, we had an amazing commemorative exhibition for our founders as well as our futures, representing the future of photography. So Ebenezer was one of 6 artists represented in that exhibition. And actually, as it happens, his work was on the cover, or was the featured image on the postcard that went out to everyone. So, yes, kudos. Ebenezer's here today to talk about a project that came out of a residency that is a partnership between Blue Sky and Sitka Center for Art and Ecology. And again, it's open to Blue Sky alum artists, and Ebenezer was our choice last year, is that right? 2000?
Yes, for 2020.
2020. So the artists have an opportunity to go out to Sitka, which is on the Oregon coast in Otis, Oregon, and spend time there immersed in nature and come up with something. It could be a project, it could be something that is actually, the generative work that we find here. So I look forward to hearing all about this process and this idea of the artist book. It's yet another way to experience the visual image, and we're so delighted to have Ebenezer Galluzzo here with us today. So thank you. So, I'll turn it over. And Ebenezer will take questions throughout as he's talking about the project, and then these works will also be for sale at the very end. So, and this catalog as well too is for sale too. So anyway, enjoy and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for showing up and being here. And again, just a reminder, if you have questions that come up during the talk, please feel free to ask. When I'm ever in a talk that I find really interesting and intriguing, sometimes when I wait to the end, I lose my question. And we'll just see how this goes. It's a new form of talking about art in a book form versus I'm used to having art up on the walls that I'm talking about. So we'll just see how this whole process goes. My kind of overall arc plan for the talk is to talk a little bit about my experience at Sitka, how that inspired the work that I made, what it was to come back. The next phase of inspiration and evolution of the work was creating the book, and then the process of producing that and trying to get it out into the world. That's the plan. I've learned that sometimes it just goes off the rails and goes someplace else on its own, but that's the intention. The other thing that I always say too, before I give lectures and talks, especially about the recent body of work that I've been making with self-portraiture, is that I invite people to notice their reactions that arise while I'm talking, to notice the reactions that arise when I start to share the images, And that could be across the board. You might have reactions of confusion, not understanding, elation, disgust, confusion. I ask people to notice as those arise and to see if they can take a moment to ask themselves where that is coming from and why. Are we all kind of on board with that invite? Yay, thank you. Excellent. Thanks, honey. So, I guess first, a little bit before I go into the residency, is a little bit of what I was creating right before I went out there. So, I have a body of work that's ongoing called As I Am, also self-portraitures. And it's a lot of looking at object, symbol, in the ways that they relate to gender, and trying to kind of reframe those codes around gender and try and find my place and where I exist in. And again, it was really like object-oriented and symbol-oriented and posture-oriented, and that's what I was making and focusing on before I went out there. And I actually had a show a few months before we went out to Sitka at the Paragon Art Gallery up in Northeast Portland, and I was giving a talk there. And as I was giving the talk, as sometimes happens, I have all these notes and then plans, and then random things come out of my mouth. And one of the things that kind of came out from that work that took me by surprise, and I took a mental note of like, whoop, that's a nugget, let's hold that for later, was I asked the question, what shapes my mirror? I had in that series, there were some mirror elements, ones of mirrors breaking, other ones of mirrors whole. And I asked that question, what shapes my mirror? To really think of what influences how I look at myself. That can be, or it is, my family, my friends, the way that they look at me with love and adoration and respect. That really influences how I see myself and is so important. And then also, the culture at large, for sure, impacts also how I see myself. So I wanted to see what it would be like to go out to Sitka, to be in a place of landscape and green and forest and ocean, and have that be my mirror, and to see what would happen if the way I looked at myself would change. Would that be for the better? What would that be like? Because I was also leaving that comfort of my family and friends. I also purposely took a time away from screens and social media and blah, blah, all that stuff too. So, invited that in, which felt also especially important because pieces of the rhetoric attached to parts of my expression and identity as a trans man, which by the way I forgot to introduce myself with pronouns he, him, was that this expression, how I know myself to be true in my body, is unnatural, is separate from nature. So, in hindsight, looking at and shaping and having that intention of asking the question, what shapes my mirror? What if the forest and the water and the trees, what if that was the reflection? Was almost, or was, asking the question of, if I can see myself, aspects of myself reflected back to me, then I am proving that narrative wrong. If I can see myself in nature, in the natural world, then I can say that is not true. And like, logically, I can go, that ain't true, whatever, ignorance, all that kind of stuff. Like, a part of me knows that that is a bunch of bullshit. By the way, I tend to swear, so it's passion coming through. So there's a part of me that knows that, and there's another part that just after years, it influences how I see myself, how I have seen myself. There you go. So this is how I entered into SITCON and the intention I set forth for myself. And it was interesting. The first week of being there, it's amazing what assumptions or expectations you can put on a thing. So when I said, yes, I will let the landscape be my mirror, I had a very preconceived notion of what that would look like, which was, the hills are alive, spinning in meadows, grand epic vistas and majesty and expansiveness, and there was that. It was a beautiful, beautiful, amazing landscape out there at the Costa Cascade Head. And there was also lots of other layers to that as well. In the first week, there were lots of trails to explore, places I was allowed to go, also places that were private. So had to be very, very careful not to trespass. And the places that were allowed to go was very, very public. So it was at first trying to find a place between a lot of the boundaries set up there, where I could go to exist that felt safe, also just where I could go to try and take pictures that felt safe as well. And thankfully, there's a section of BLM land in the back of the campus. And there's some faint trails, deer trails, a couple people wandered up there. And I kind of, throughout my stay, at least every other day, sometimes every day, sometimes multiple times, would start to kind of explore those random paths. And it was a lot of, again, and looking at that expectation, grandiose, big, beautiful, it had that. There was also going off on the unexplored areas, there was also lots of random, it's March, so there's also a lot of wet, and it's very cold, and there's a whole lot of elk poop, and other random piles of decayed mush from over the winter, and there's lots of bones and death, and continually trying to orient myself of where the fuck I'm going and not knowing. So all of this, here's the mirror I was wet with, right? In my first week and a half there. And what it brought up was many feelings of uncertainty, also disgust a bit, being a bit grossed out by certain things, also fear, trying to figure out where I could go for many reasons that felt safe, navigating areas that weren't really clear. And that felt, all of those feelings felt very familiar to how it has felt, especially in the first 2 to 3 years as I began, I like the term a friend shared with me, as I began transing. Because transition for me means a certain thing in the way it's been depicted in mainstream culture, so I like transing. So I'm gonna try and use that. Because I had those same feelings, and I do still at times, it definitely still comes up. Those feelings of uncertainty, feelings of being afraid, feelings of being disgusted with myself and how I felt, and doubt, and all of those things. And so, at first, there was that bit of this is not what I had planned for myself, and I was expecting a much more lovely, affirming mirror, and this is not what I thought I would get. Boo. And the more that I would walk through those woods, and I was pushing my edge of farther, just so I could track and know where I was and I would not get lost. But spending so much time in a place and needing and having to move very slowly and very intentionally, and just pushing that edge of comfort each day and finding my own way in the woods and looking at things, the way that I looked at things started to shift. Like even me, I love being outside, I love the outdoors, and I also have those preconceived notions of what nature is and the beauty that it entails. And then also when looking at that, being like, yes, and that means death, and that means bones, and that means shit, and that means decay, and all that as well. It's all an essential part of that. And that, for me, as I was walking every day, was helping me kind of transform how I looked at those aspects that I felt about myself when I looked in the mirror, right? They're all essential. They all made up this vital, vital, vital ecosystem. They also had a whole lot of power to them. Like here were these things, like, you know, I was asking around to people there, of the people who gave tours, I was like, hey, what do people, like, are there certain things when people go on tours that are like really gross people out and they get creeped out by? And they were like, man, slugs, salamanders, spiders. And I was like, huh, interesting, that's cool. Wouldn't have thought of that, but okay. And I just thought, okay, that thing right there, that feeling to go, ugh. As much as I want to also take that personally, when I heard that, I was like, that is power. Here's a tiny little thing that can make people freak out in their skin. That is actually not a judgmental detriment on those things. That is a powerful, powerful thing that embodies. So this is all to say, these were all going through my mind as I was starting to make photographs there and becoming much more comfortable and safe in this place. Feeling like the bubble I had carved out for myself to exist suddenly got a lot bigger. It did start to feel a lot safer, and it started to feel a lot less like I was needing to prove anything. To go walking every day, it became less and less. I would also, even though it was really cold, it felt really good to walk around with my shirt off. Also, I was taking lots of photos where I would undress partially or fully, and, you know, half the time doing the lovely little self-portrait dance of like, press shutter, lie down. There was lots of like walking around the forest naked or partially naked. And again, to have that feel totally normal and natural and not feel like it was going to be judged or attacked, or I could walk and not have to worry about how I was walking. Do you know what I mean? I could have gestures and dress and not have to think about how any person was going to receive me. I just got to exist for days and days and weeks, and that was really freeing. So now all that's happening, and now we get to talk about photography. I just had to do the setup. Okay, so all that influenced what I was making and what themes I was drawn towards. Again, so not to be too on the nose, but I did bring a whole box of broken mirror out there. From a previous art piece photograph I made. So I did work a lot with mirror and kind of to retell and reshape that mirror and how I saw myself. And I'll hold up the book in a sec, but just because so everybody can see it. So like mirror became a way to embody for me what felt multifaceted about myself. And also as a way, as a form of protection for myself too. And reframing that mirror to be a blessing. To, again, see myself and my expression as divine. So that was one of the things that kind of came up. Also, just getting to be who I was without having to worry about it. Desire came full front also of being free to photograph all the myriad of ways that meant for me. And it was an interesting thing getting to take a break from the social media aspect of things, how much more I went to feel okay about showing parts of my body. Because I started to feel very comfortable out there and very safe, but I wasn't thinking in the back of my mind what was postable, which I find very interesting, and I will get back to later. But also allowing myself to take pictures that felt fully embodying of how I feel. Another aspect that came up of themes, where everything kind of came to a head, was again the bones. You'll see, and I'll show it right here. They show up a lot in the book. They're in the book. They're on the cover of what holds the book. And that was based on an experience that kind of sealed everything that I was feeling to lodge somewhere deep so it could stay. Because I would love to tell you that all this awareness has now fully stayed, and I have never been rocked off of it and doubted myself and had those thoughts of disgust come up again. That would be a lie. But there were moments that kind of helped it hold deep so it could take root. And that was an experience with the bones, which was I was on my walk, and like I said, I went further up each day, and I was getting to the point where I was like, this is pretty far up here. I am even starting to lose faint deer and elk trails, and the ridge is starting to go away. Okay, you can feel that edge where the hairs start to go up, and you're like, yep, I am really far away from people. So I went up the farthest I'd ever gone, and I looked, and it looked like there was a possible clearing where maybe I could see the ocean. Because up there, when you're in the forest, it's also difficult to see the ocean as well. So I began to trek across the hillside, and I made it about 10 steps and came upon an elk skeleton laid out before me. And all of the flesh was pretty much gone. There was a fair amount of fur. All the cartilage was still intact. And the very human part is oh geez, cougars. Something did kill this thing. And there was a lot of a feeling of a gift being shown to me. And I went to visit that spot, and still go up to visit that spot a lot. In fact, as I was making this book, I've continued to go out there and ask permission from that particular place to make sure that this project felt like it was in service to that moment and that place, because it felt so special. Because in that moment, and every time I went back, I would see that pile of bones, and I could see how it had slowly decayed over many months. And I could tell that it was an elk based on the size and the bones. I didn't know what the fuck gender it was. I didn't know what anatomy it had. It didn't matter. It was an amazing thing to go looking at this and saying, and thinking, or coming to the realization that no matter how I dress or walk or have sex or any of those things, in the end, I will be welcomed by the body of the earth when my time in this body is done. And that for me lodged a very great sense of belonging. It really obliterated any feeling of wrongness or judgment or condition that I felt like was needed to be. So that's why those bones hold so much for me in this book. So, and I took a lot of pictures, all kind of stemming from all of these feelings welling up in me. The freedom of what it felt like of just existing. And then it's time to go back home on the onset of a pandemic. And that was an interesting transition to go from tons of space and natural world to suddenly being like, oh my God, not a lot of space. Also, safety feels really different now because germs and disease and all of that. And it really felt like, do you ever have those dreams where you feel like you had a super profound dream and you wake up and you're like, oh my God, that was amazing. Let me just try and pull on those threads, and you can feel that dream kind of passing through your fingers like sand a little bit, like you can't quite grasp it. There was that feeling of is that real? Was everything that I had out there, can that come with me? How much does that translate? Does it all really happen? So, that's where this was. And I had a whole lot of photos. I showed some of them to you. I had a whole lot of photos, but I was still thinking in a brain of, all right, this is going to add on to a current ongoing series I had. And so in that context, I had 2 images that would work out of a month and probably over 20 to 25 different scenes that I had set up, as well as landscapes, and 600 photos. So there was that not quite satisfied yet with where the work was going. And I want to get this right there. Okay. Now this is the part of the story that I'm telling you all where we get into how the book started to happen. If y'all are wondering, we're on to that phase now. So I'm at home trying to still feel that connection to everything that felt really powerful and profound. And there was another artist there named Altea Narici. She is a cellist, she's a singer, she's an artist, she's just really amazing. She's from Italy. And after I came back, she was still out there. Oh, here it is. She was still out there, and I had taken her a few times up to the paths that I was walking, not to the skeleton, but a few other places. And about a month after I was back, she released this song. Oh, when y'all were signing up, registering, did anybody take a chance to watch the video that was there? You did. Gold stars for you. If you get a chance, and you want to, please go watch it. I'm quite tickled with it. I think it's lovely. I'm very proud of it. But really the thing was, that's where Altea's song, you can listen to it in its entirety if you want to go hear it. Come and ask me later and I will tell you again, and it's posted on my website and all that, but Heron on the Roof is where you can hear her music. And she's releasing an album later this winter, or starting an album. So she made this song. I'll go back to the song, which I still listen to it and can't not cry. So, at the very end, I'm going to read it to you. It very much struck me. It hit me because I was dissatisfied and felt like there was another layer to the work that I had created. And here's the translation of the last little chunk of the song. Once upon a time, in the forest, there was a story. And the story tells more or less this, that in every forest there is a light, there is a voice, there is a spell singer. In every forest there is darkness, there is a blue night. And in every forest there is a story to tell. So now sing it. Sing it yourself, and I'll accompany you. and like through tears, I was also like, "Whoa, oh my God, it's a story." Yes, this isn't like one or two images of a feeling. It's the whole, how can we bring that feeling of walking and pushing that edge of going into the woods and discovering different paths and all of that. It's the story of this forest and all that that means to me. Huzzah! Da-da-da! Fireworks, fireworks! That's what it felt like. And so I started printing out lots and lots and lots and lots of images, and I have this huge magnet board in my studio, and I was putting them up in all different sizes and finding different ways that they could connect and talk to each other and like follow that thread. And I was definitely thinking in ways of like, this is what it will be like in an exhibition. And it was very exciting. And and then again, reminder, COVID. And another month went by and I was like, yep, this ain't going anywhere. And lots of places are closed down. And at this point, I was really starting to miss just being able to touch and hug people in a way that felt safe. I was missing the tactile feeling of connecting with people. And also just missing the art spaces and the queer spaces that are public and also feel safe. And all those were shut down. And so I was grasping and trying to think, what is a different way that this can go and reach people outside of thinking a show? And then, if anybody knows the artist Kristen Knight, who's also very, very brilliant, she made a very different fold-out book that was about memory. And it's beautiful. And when I saw it and ordered it, looked through it again, where I was like, it's a book! Oh my God! And so I immediately started taking all the photos off of my magnet board and cutting them up and seeing how they would lay top of each other and what the revealio would be and all that. Again, going back to the show I had at Paragon, when I was working with Zemi Barr, who worked here, she helped me curate it, I played with laying some of the photos on top of each other to kind of create a figure. And this was like a ripe opportunity to really follow that thread. And it excited me for many reasons, right? Here's where I'll start holding up the book. And again, when I'm done with this talk, y'all come and like talk to me. I love being talked to. Come and play with the book. It's meant to be touched. It's meant to be handled. It's meant to be loved with your fingers. All right. So it excited me to put many images together, to have that thread come together. But also, for me, it was that excitement, again, when I was talking about when I used the word transition. For me, in a lot of mainstream representation, when I hear the word transition and how I've seen it portrayed in really popular culture, I see it in a much of a very body-oriented way, meaning what you decide to do to your body. And very much before and after, where I don't think is very realistic. In any major transition that you've gone through your life in anything, relationship, major job, child, anything, and especially in this, it is not a from point A to point B scenario. It's, I don't know if it's ever going to have an end point, honestly. I think it's a place of continually trying to find those moments, for me anyway, of what it means. Getting to a place where I am reminded of the trueness of myself, right? And reminding myself the essentialness of me existing, and that I belong in the landscape, right? So, to have so many layers to this, and this is just the beginning, to have so many pieces unfold just excited me so much of like, this is close to what it feels like. And again, there's no right way to do it. In fact, it actually challenges you, which by the way, I have many times of even coming here was like, you're not gonna do this talk right now. There is no right way. There's no right way to do this talk. There's no right way to be trans. There's no right way to be masculine or feminine or anything in between. There's my way. And y'all are gonna have your own way of exploring this book, of all those things. But this is what like fueled fire and excitement of this. So just as a little like processy technical bit, I kind of like this action, you can't really get it. So you're all gonna come up here afterwards and like play with this. That's what you're gonna do. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Like this bit, this was the first bit I got. And I think I might have actually screamed when I did it. I don't know. I was like, oh Jesus, this is something good. And so what I started, I knew it was going to eventually become a whole body form, right? And so I kind of made the maquette first and playing with all the different folds, and then slowly added to it into a place that felt done. And then I found the images. About 80% of them are from Sitka. I tried using all of them from Sitka, but it was not as strong. And it felt perfect to kind of bridge that place of, it's not about a place in the woods that felt really powerful to me. It was the reminder of what that meant and how to bring that with me, right? And so piecing it together with images that I made here in Portland. And that all in all took about 6 months as I was doing this talk. And talking to John and looking at my timeline, I was like, dude, how the hell did this happen in the middle of a pandemic and everything that was going on? I don't know. I think I slept a lot less. But that's how the book kind of came into being. And there was lots of edits and trying different pictures and seeing what felt right. What looked good, but what also felt right. Right? So this one with the bones here took a while to get to. Like it wasn't my first choice, second choice, or third choice, but it was again that thing of how much is this still a part of my body in a way, right? That memory, that place, that sacredness. So there's a little brief glimpse into the creation. And again, if you have questions, feel free to ask if I'm missing anything. It's a lot to cover. So then it became time. I was getting the idea. It was pretty realized, and then it was like, all right, let's make this happen. Start writing some grants, finding some printers. By the way, I've never made a book like ever. So I find it also hilarious. I was like, yeah, let's make a book that has all of this going on. Yeah. Yeah. I was not thinking about what envelope it would fit in at the end. I kind of wish I did because it would have been easier to find one. I maybe possibly would have made less complex of a thing if I thought about what it was going to be like to create it. But I'm glad I didn't. Right?
Yeah.
So it came time to start looking for printers. And then they were like, yeah, we can totally do that. And I was like, yes, it's possible. And so I was speaking with the printer here in Portland who had the capacity to do it, to print front to back and make the cuts, right? Like, it takes a certain type of printer to do that. There are amazing fine art printers here in Portland, but their printing didn't have the capacity to do that front to back and have accurate registration, meaning everything lined up. So I found one here in Portland to do it. And I was talking to them and I showed them the design. Or, wait, hadn't done that yet. I told them the premise. I told them that there would be cutouts. I told them that it did have nudity in it. And they were like, that sounds great. We work with Pride Month a lot to do printing for them. For sure, send us the design. And so I did. And A few days later, I got an email that they would decline the project due to content. Thank you. That was also my reaction. So I thought about this. I'm actually not going to talk about that printing place. I want to talk about the printers that didn't bat a damn eye when I showed them the design. I actually want to elevate them instead of having the focus be on the company that made a dumb decision, in my opinion. So that's where I'm going with that. And it did, like, having that response was very disappointing. It also lit a fire underneath my butt, even more so, of like, oh, we're printing this thing now. Oh, it's on. We are going to distribute this thing out there because if this makes you uncomfortable, it's because this is not being seen enough. Because it's important, because it's a part of the ecology of our human nature, and it needs to be seen. Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. So yes, that happened. And, like, there was that, like, old reflection coming back up, kind of whamming me in the face of it, of looking at this thing that I made, that I'm still very, very proud of, but it suddenly kind of, like, caused those little tings into me to go, oh, it reinforced, I guess, those old ideas that are on their way out, culturally and personally, of feeling like this is wrong in some way, or needs a disclaimer. That was a big one. I suddenly felt like, oh, it's on me. I need to, like, prepare people more to see this, and, like, all of those things were coming up of, and it was not, what's the word? Oh, indecent. That it was an indecent representation of someone, me. And that led to a different round of questions that I'm still sitting with, because this work continually evolves, which is, how do we equate nature and being natural to bodies? Where is that arbitrary line? It's all arbitrary. It's arbitrary how we construct gender. So where is that arbitrary line where we distinguish natural in terms of bodies and not? And then how does that equate to beauty, acceptability, decency, all those things? Because the amount that the term, well, that's unnatural, has been weaponized is astounding to me, and this was an instance of it. So this was another layer of that journey, and although it sucked, I think it ultimately, like, gave it more force behind me of what it was about, and why I wanted to make it, and why I needed to make it, and what this book was still teaching me. And then on top of that, like, I don't need to go into it too much, but then let's add, oh, pause, I did find a printer, surprise, spoiler. In the story of this, Girly Press Printers up in Seattle, so damn rad. Woman-owned, queer-based, like, sent them to them, didn't blink an eye, were like, yep, cool, great, let's talk about specs, right? Also, Morel Printers here in Portland, man, they did not have the printing capacity to do so, but they were like, we will try and make this work. We can do it. So I really appreciated them as well. So eventually, it being made, I'm going to pause for a sec. In the process of being made, if anybody, for anybody that follows me on Instagram, I'll get to why the blah is in just a second. I shared a video of, like, I was about to send the printing in to, like, okay and start printing everything, and then I changed it very last minute the day before because, I don't know if you can see, I'm going to try and move it so you can see the shimmer. You will all come and see this afterwards. Plug. So, this whole thing had been in existence for 6 months because it took a while to refine a printer. So I had the whole design ready to go. laid out all the stuff. And then finally found a printer and added this last element of gold leaf around the body. The Venn diagram is a powerful tool here for me because it really embodies that feeling of the place between, of being between, and it's a sacred place. So whenever I add gold leaf to my images, it's usually because it's something I really want to give a big whammy of blessing to. It's a thing that I am still trying to reconcile in myself, to honor and love and respect. So, hence, after all the things with the printers, after having multiple posts getting taken down on social media due to community guidelines and content and all that shit, I realized it was starting to take a toll on me, and so needing to add that last bit of circular gold leaf. Which, okay, now leads us to now. It's printed, getting out there in the world. So I guess I'll circle back and start wrapping things up, and then we can have questions, and you all can come and look at this beautiful, stunning thing that I made. Well, I guess what feels right, unless there seems like I'll have you in my grasps, and maybe we'll just release some questions afterwards, is I guess to go back to that place, the place between where the title came from, and what it means to me, which I don't want to talk too much about so you all can see what it means to you. Oh, great, good. It is that place where the bones, that is the reminder of belonging. It is that place of honoring the transition of things. It's, for me, does not mean a thing to rush between one state of being to another state of being, but it is a place to be honored in and of itself in the process. It is its own destination, and for me, again, having a book that opens and closes and changes each time, it's a place to return to. It's a place to remember that belonging. I would love to stay there as much as possible, and when I forget, I can go back. So that is what this project has led me to at this point, and it will probably teach me more as things continue. But I wanted to end, because this is like, I guess, a book club, so I might as well read you something. I wrote this as I was remembering one of the photos that I did after going to visit those pile of bones 2 or 3 times and asking permission of the place. I took a picture with them. They didn't end up being a part of the book, but I did lie down next to them. Oh, and they did. Later, a year and a half later, I went back after it really decayed and did take this picture. So I did lie with the bones in many ways. The first time I did it, stripping down and naked, I heard a crash in the woods. And, yeah, and I was like, fuck. And you go, something did kill this thing. Is it a cougar? Nope. Nope, cougar would be a lot quieter. Is it a bear? Could be a bear. It's very, very loud. And also in the back of my mind, I was like, my worst fear was that it was a person, which I also find very interesting. Yeah. That would be the most terrifying. But it ended up being, getting up, was about 15 feet away, was the herd that inhabits that area of Cascade Head. Probably 20 or 30, large, walking by. And it felt like so many things coming full circle, and like their blessing. So I just kind of stood there, naked in the woods, and said thank you. And so when I was thinking about how I would write about this project, instead of an artist statement, it eventually came, but instead of an artist statement, these words came. So I'll read these and then we can open up for questions. In the forest, I listened to the bones of the living and the dead, and this is what I heard. Will you meet me here? In a meadow between forest and ocean, between life and death, between before and after, important and insignificant, between your language and mine. Will you meet us here in the place between? So this book is also an invitation and a dedication to that place. Thank you. Questions? I'll give you a pause as you collect yourselves, because I've obviously blown all of your minds. Which is the amount of gratitude that I have. The gratitude that I have for my dear friends and family. I know I seem a calm, cool, collected, confident person up here who's quite witty and charming, but as they can attest, this was like a roller coaster of an up and down journey of releasing something that felt very personal and vulnerable, and they held my hand and were the mirror I needed them to be when I could not find it myself.